Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the second episode of Republic of Common Sense. And today we got an interesting topic lined up for you.
No! God, please, no!
Oh, yes, we're going to talk about free speech and what it means in the Sri Lankan context. An expert opinion from a very well known channel. So, what is free speech? Let us cite to the US Constitution just to get an idea about what the free world thinks of free speech. We've looked at the US Constitution in particular because of two reasons. One, they are still considered the leader of the free world. Number two, we just couldn't be bothered looking at all the constitutions in the world. So let me just simplify what is on the screen. It technically means the legislator cannot pass any laws discriminating against the practice of any religion, the freedom of assembly, and of course the freedom to speak up, even if it is against the government itself. By the way, so-called hate speech is also considered as free speech, unless of course it incites violence. I mean, we can't have that. So if for instance someone calls someone else unpleasant names, it is not a crime. It is still free speech, and offending someone can never be a crime, and subsequently just because you are offended does not mean you are right.
Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
We believe that not understanding what free speech stands for and not utilizing it properly is one of the main reasons that so many countries nowadays are going through internal conflicts. In some so-called progressive countries, even comedians have been penalized, not just on social media but by law, just because they offended someone or some particular group. Now, where does that come from? Because comedy is supposed to be taking a humorous view on something that is accepted to be serious. That is where the comedy comes from. That is why it's funny. So you are really telling me that people need to run into their safe spaces just because they can't take a joke? Adding to this is the behavior of big tech such as Facebook and Twitter. YouTube is fine, guys. YouTube is fine.
2 hours later.
Though these big tech have been incorporated as platforms rather than publishers, they have started, sometimes discreetly and most of the times indiscreetly, to censor users and posts. And going back to the First Amendment of the US Constitution, it obviously covers the right to protest peacefully as well. However, peaceful protesting excludes rioting and vandalizing in its definition itself. Doesn't matter what CNN tells you. So now let's look at what the Sri Lankan Constitution says about free speech. What is on your screen is just an extract, and there are of course a few other clauses that are related to this one. We have given the relevant chapter along with the clause numbers on the screen and the link to the Constitution in the description. So now that we've seen what the law in Sri Lanka says about free speech, let's see what is actually in practice. Well, it's difficult to claim that Sri Lankans have total freedom of speech, especially against the government or its politicians. The provision made for free speech in the constitution seems is limited to the page of paper it is written on. Well, don't get me wrong, it could be much worse. There's plenty of much worse countries that will remain unnamed, of course. But our situation is still not sufficient to allow open criticism of the political system, obviously. This restriction is also evident by the fact that we have no means of protecting against a corrupt government or corrupt politicians. Unlike in the US, an average citizen of the country cannot legally own a firearm to defend themselves in Sri Lanka.
But hang on, we are not promoting the use of firearms for civilians in Sri Lanka, okay?
We have a better idea. So what is this better idea to improve the situation in Sri Lanka? As we see it, the only way to promote free speech is by engaging in it. So we certainly need more free speech forums and events. Easier said than done, right? But where to start? I guess one place we can start is through a Truth Speaking YouTube channel. Well, we do need to start somewhere, right? And we strongly believe that truthful speech is the best weapon against corruption. But remember, always back your speech with facts so that people will actually listen and understand. Anyway, time to bring this segment to a close. Please let us know your suggestions on how to improve the situation of free speech in Sri Lanka in the following comments. We look forward to hearing from you. Until we meet again, over and out.